So
I love that voice.
uh
I love that this is being recorded.
that's correct. That's correct. So how are you doing today, Katie? Oh, just
I'm
ask the
doing
question as you're
great.
drinking. Awesome, awesome. Welcome to UK. How long have you been in UK so far?
What is it? It's been about a month now.
A month.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
Oh,
maybe even a little more. I don't know, but I'm finally adjusted to the sleep schedule, so we're good.
yeah, yeah. Wow. Like I remember the first time I got jet lag was when I went to Vegas. It was a horrible feeling because I'm used to the cold. And when I went to Vegas, it was so hot and I was jet lagged. I and it was the first time in my life I ever experienced like a hot wind. Like a hot wind.
Oh yeah.
Apart from passing through my backside. I mean, this blowing wind, I was like, what's going on? This is hot.
It's horrible. And it's like you'll walk out and you'll take a breath of air and it's everything. If there was any moisture in your mouth, it's gone. And your nose, everything, you're just like right up in the hot air. But yeah, I can imagine that'd be even worse. And when I was here, because I was in quarantine too. So it was like, I remember it was like 1:30 every day. It felt like I just got slapped in the face with sleep. So I would just be sitting there and all of a sudden it's just like 1:30. And so finally, like, 1:30 would come along and I'm like trying to dodge. I'm like, where is it? Where's it coming from? And then it would like extend to 4, but eventually got the hang of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good, man. That's good. So thank you very much for your time. I truly appreciate it. Um, yeah, I've learned about you only recently. You know, movies and stuff you'd been in, and you're kind of a big deal. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you having me on. No, this is fun.
Oh, it's all good. Like I've always been intrigued and interested in actors and actresses, how they get started, and being on set and that sort of thing. And it's just fascinating. So yourself, how long have you been in the movie business?
So I moved to Hollywood about 5 years ago. So comparatively, generally a short period of time. Usually people are in it, for about 10 years or so, and then they start to see more consistent work. Um, but technically, I mean, I had acting classes when I was really little. I had an agency when I was really young, did some commercials, things like that. Local plays. Uh, Even in college, I tried to dabble in some little college films, and then once I graduated and was kind of on my own, I got into the local film um, industry in Indiana, which is really really small, mostly really short films or really really low budget. But once I started doing that and seeing that I could actually do it, because there was always this thing in my brain like, you can't, this isn't a realistic job, do something that is. Um, Once I started to gain more confidence, I was like, while I'm young enough, let me try to pursue this thing, and if it doesn't work out, I can always do something else. But this is it, the longer I was in Hollywood and even the more rejection or the more periods without work or anything like that, where I was thinking, man, I have to get another job or do something else. There was really nothing I could think of that I wanted to do besides this. So
I've
yeah.
heard that it's tough. Um, and people move out to Hollywood in order to, you know, get a break, as they call it.
Yeah.
And many of them end up being broke instead. Um, and you said you started this from really young. You was going acting classes from young. Is that right?
Yeah. And it's funny because when I was a kid, you just you're pretending, that's all it is. And I kind of still have that mentality now, but when I was younger, I didn't conceive of what I was doing. I didn't think it was acting. I didn't know any different, it was just, we're showing up and we're pretending to be animals today, or we're showing up and we're memorizing his words and saying them. And to me, it was just a thing I was doing, and I didn't register it as something else, as this, this thing that people study forever and ever.
Yeah, yeah. That's amazing. Um, that's so cool. And what age did you start? I mean, what age did,
My oh, sorry.
sorry, no, please. Yeah, what age did you go to acting classes and then actually, begin acting?
So, I mean, my mom had me signed up with an agency when I was a baby. Um, but again, like that didn't register. Like those years really didn't really register. I think when I really knew that it was an art form that I wanted to pursue was in high school. I started doing school plays there. I helped assistant direct a play. I was also heavily involved in the music side of things. So I was a drummer in the percussion department, all that. And so for a really long time, I kind of had to balance back and forth if I wanted to do something, science-based or something that was a more sure thing. I thought about doing psychology for a long time. Um, Stable career, stable job, if I wanted to go the artistic route. And, I got into college and I was like, no, I'm going to go the stable route. So I actually majored in psychology. I wound up being a police officer in college, which was a wild program.
Oh,
Um, and yeah, yeah, really, really weird program they had there. And then after college, I was like, okay, well, I can either go back and get my PhD, or I can take a break for a second and really think things through. And so I did take a break from school for a while and really, really thought about what I wanted in my life. And that's when I really started to focus on acting. I started taking acting classes, started reading every book I could on, methods and theories and things like that. And just history, memoirs written by other actors, so things like that, and then really started to delve into the business side of things too. And so I would say when I was like 25 to 26 was when I really took it seriously and started pursuing it.
amazing, amazing. So you'd taken acting classes. I remember I read a book by, I can't remember who it was now. It's a famous actor, Matthew. What's his surname? Um, McConaughey. Matthew.
So McConaughey.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And when he pursued his career, that wasn't the first choice. It came at a later time. I think part of the story was people had mentioned to him that he was a great storyteller, and that kind of almost like planted the seed for him to think about, maybe I am a good storyteller, and that pushed him in that sort of direction, or helped to shepherd him in that direction. And he yeah, so he was a natural storyteller, but as things started to become successful, it's only then that he decided, actually, I think I should maybe do some acting classes to make sure that I make great progress from this. And it was not until he started acting classes that he realized that it wasn't as organic as he was originally when he just went into it straight away. Almost like, as you were saying, about just seeing it as, just playing around when you was a kid, just let's pretend we're an animal and stuff like that. Whereas the moment he really started, okay, let's take this serious, it almost took away that slight authenticity. Did you feel as though, because you started early, you already had a nice foundation as a kid, that you had your own character and you wasn't just taking on a rigid structure of classes? Do you think that might have helped you a bit, the fact that you kind of was already involved from a young age? Or do you think the classes
Yeah, I do.
really? Mm.
No, I mean, they say that you can go to classes, you can read all these books and learn as much as you can, but really hands-on experience, practical experience is where you kind of find yourself. That's how I feel with a lot of things. If you were going to sit me down in a classroom and teach me, and I bring a lot of things back to martial arts, right? But teach me a martial art in a classroom, that's great and all, but can I actually defend myself in a sparring situation or in a real life situation? It's a totally different application, um, because there's so many other factors at play. So yeah, it's funny because a lot of those acting classes that people, um, swear to are trying to teach you how to get out of your head and stop thinking about the formula and stop thinking about, this is the only way to do things, and to start thinking about how it's like to be a kid again, like make believe feel like this is the real world, but it's not,
Mhm.
and I think, yeah, if you learn it as a kid or if you have that experience as a kid, you get practice performing. You get practice learning how to be a different character or finding yourself in a character, knowing what it's like to just let go and not worry about people judging you all the time. That's the kind of thing that I feel like is lost a lot of times once we grow up and start worrying about what everyone's thinking and am I good enough? Am I whatever? And I've certainly had that that block and still do sometimes, of course.
Right, right. And that's, yeah,
Yeah.
that's another interesting thing. I often think to myself, there's times I watch a movie and I'm really enjoying the movie. And then all of a sudden I'll just get a moment. I don't know if it's an epiphany moment, but I'm enjoying the movie. And then afterward, like a moment happens where I'm like, damn, why am I enjoying this so much? Like, why am I so captivated? And then I'll take a step back and I'll say, this actor is amazing. And then, I realize that it's not real life, it is acting. And when you see things like, this, I don't know, just dramatic expressions on a person's face, and when you see tears run down their face, you're like, this is not even real, but it looks
Yeah.
so real. You get drawn in by the character. And it makes me question, like, wow, how does a person do that? How does a person get so involved, so ingrained in the character that is so believable? It doesn't, they call it acting, but it doesn't seem like acting. It seems like they've really embodied the character. How does that work? How do people become so great?
I don't know. I think it's different for everybody, in things that they draw from, experiences they draw from, feelings, that they might have, research, all that kind of thing. So I think it's different for everybody. You know, I mean, for me, I'm very fortunate to have had a lot of life experience. Um, so that honestly, I can vividly remember certain moments that I've had. And sometimes if I'm having a particularly stressful moment or emotional moment, or um, I'm really confused about something or the way I'm feeling, I really sit there and I sit in it for a second and I think about it. I don't want it to go away right away. Like, oh, I'm feeling mad, I want it to go away. I'm like, no, I need to think about that and just like, and feel it for a moment. Just let yourself feel. Because that's just an experience that, uh, in a way, I want to document, for starters. But I also think, you want to make sure that those emotions are valid, that your thoughts are valid, everything like that. You don't want to have shame in them and put in and toss them aside. So, um, I think a lot of it is life experience, being able to understand how people think, feel, behave in certain situations. A lot of it is understanding how storytelling works. Like I'm a character, I have wants and needs, and I'm going to do them the way that this character would. And you're a character who might have other wants and needs. We're trying to get something from each other. I'm trying to get something from you. So there's this constant, it's like just a normal conversation, like
Mm,
any conversation you have. Yeah, like right now, if I were just going to sit here and not say anything, you're asking me questions, I'm giving you one word answers. You're going to try to do something naturally to
mhm,
get more out of me, right?
mm,
um and so we all behave in a certain way, and it's just kind of like really being observant, understanding that, really understanding yourself, being introspective, understanding how, your emotions come into play. And God, there's a lot of things to it, and that's where acting classes can help too. If somebody just doesn't really doesn't understand how to get to that point, or how to feel confident enough to portray what they naturally feel. It's where a lot of ways that classes can come into play too. So, or certain methods, you know, if you want to, or techniques or whatever, if you want to start subscribing to one, you know, that's a way to do it.
Yeah, yeah. Love it. Love it. I often think to myself, how do people get into a particular character or a particular emotion which might be quite sensitive to them? Is it possible, or is it something that actors normally kind of avoid if they're like, oh yeah, that particular type of emotion that doesn't work with me, we're going to have to change the script? You know, because you got some people who might have gone through certain traumas in their life and it's something that they're dealing with, so to get in that particular character, that could be quite difficult. Does that happen with people? Or is it something that they get over? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that with anybody, you know, everyone, or not everyone, but a lot of people can carry some trauma in their lives, and can be avoidant of situations that might spark that trauma. And you know, of course, as an actor, you're asked to sometimes be extremely vulnerable in situations that you might not be comfortable with, and um, I think that's a personal choice. You know, if it's something that you've worked on and you can handle, and you know how to access that without causing, you know, further distress, then you know that's up to you to go for it or not. But if there's a particular situation that you don't feel comfortable with, and you know that it's not going to be mentally healthy for you to do, then maybe you shouldn't do it. Because what that's going to do is, like, you know, I've worked scenes before where you know, it just uh I had a thing in the past that happened. Um, this particular scene reminded me of it, and you know, as I'm rolling, I feel like I was really in the moment, and you know, I'm like kind of crying. That's the big thing. Everyone's like, "Oh, okay, you can cry on cue. That's well, huge, whatever." It's, you know, some people can just do it and there's no emotion behind it, but I was like genuinely was like I was feeling it in the moment, and then they call cut, and I'm like, I gotta walk away because I couldn't stop. Now I was able to, like, you know, I feel like I'm really good at calming myself down and talking myself through things. And so I was very much able to do that. And I wasn't like in hysterics, like, you know, throwing things or whatever, you know,
Yeah.
snot falling all over. But you know, I just did need a moment to myself, and there's certain things I'm sure that people respond to that they might not be able to recover from as quickly, and then that kind of um, puts a lot of added stress on everybody. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a personal choice. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. What type of roles would you typically audition for? You just go for anything, whatever your agent says, okay, we need you to do this, or is it a case of you sit down and you talk through stuff? How does it all work? Yeah, what's your do you have a particular area of genre of movies that you go for?
Well, yeah. So it's a lot of times how it works at my level is like, you know, you got a headshot. You send that into casting. You know, my manager agent, they'll look at a list of breakdowns, which comes from casting, and it'll say, you know, we're looking for female 25 to 30, you know, whatever, and then a description of that person, silly or strong or what, you know. And my agent will be like, oh, Katy fits that really well. Pop, pop, and they'll submit me for that. So my headshot, my resume, my reel, probably right off the bat, just my headshot goes to casting. And they're like, nope, 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 not the right look. So a lot of times it's like just your look and your headshot, the quality of your headshot can kind of determine what auditions you even get brought in for,
Right. The headshot. Okay.
which is kind of wild.
That, that is.
Yeah. So, I mean, majority, yeah. A lot of the time, it's just I get auditions for police, military, the tough girl, whatever. And a lot of my martial arts background, my police background, all of that, I'm sure come into play too. A lot of bad guy auditions, like villains, whatever. And then every now and then I'll get something that breaks the mold a little bit, and I'm just like, it's a breath of fresh air because I get to exercise something different. Um, so it's kind of right now a game of I'm in this category of like the fighter, the badass, something, whatever. Um, and then as my work is more received or well known, and some of my parts get to be varied a little bit, I think it'll show a little bit more range, and then I might be able to be called in for other things. But in my body type, my look alone, I'm probably not gonna wind up, in a rom-com anytime soon, or I'm probably not gonna be like your damsel in distress character, which I think is kind of dying anyway. Um, yeah, I'm a little limited, but I'm good at what I look like I'm good at, so that helps.
Yeah. What you've done some series as well on Netflix, isn't it?
Which one?
I don't know, like there's things that you've done on there, Z Nation or something. Is that one?
Oh yeah, so it's funny because our channels are different in the US and then here. So Z Nation originally was on Sci-Fi,
Oh.
which is a network that we have in the US that isn't here. I can't remember what it was on here. But then everybody knows it because of Netflix, right? Because Netflix kind of, and I can't tell you, hey, tune into Sci-Fi, because you'll be like, there's no Sci-Fi, it doesn't exist. Netflix really has come along, and it's a lot of TV shows that people might not have seen, they get to see it. So originally it was on Sci-Fi. Netflix picked it up just as reruns and stuff. But yeah, it's a zombie show called Z Nation. I like to think of it as kind of like, it has its serious moments for sure, but it's like not taking the apocalypse too seriously. There's zombies that were people that died on a weed farm, and so now they're like stoner zombies. It's silly, but it really has its moments of being really genuine and serious and sweet, and it's just a really unique, weird show. Really low budget. I mean, shot almost exclusively outside, so we didn't have to mess with like a bunch of big lights, studio lighting, all that stuff. It saves time. We'd shoot an episode in like 5 days. It was wild, but that was my first series regular, which means I'm in like every episode. That was in season 5, so like the last season. That's when I showed up, and that was the first time that I really got to take a bite into a character. Really dive into this person, create a personality, play around with it. I mean, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Do you find that people on your social media refer to you as a particular character? They might not even call you by your name, but they always like, yeah, you done this and whatever. Like, it's like, for instance, Sylvester Stallone, people call him Rocky or whatever. Do you find that people might call you a particular character and just see you as that person, that badass type of person?
Yeah, all the time. It's really funny. Yeah, so my character on Z Nation was George. It was like a play on George Washington. Long story.
Okay.
But yeah, so I get a lot of, hey George, what's up? I have I just did a thing for a show. My name was Officer Barnes, and it was just a guest star. It was one episode, but it was kind of centered around a little bit around this storyline for my character. And yeah, and just that, people call me Officer Barnes. Like, yeah, my name's right there on any of my social media for anyone to call it, call me my actual name. But yeah, they just like to do that. It's fun, and it's fun for me.
Yeah, that is funny. It's funny. Even I get people message me and they ask me my name. Like, what's your name? I'm thinking, wow,
It's right there.
you're very strange. um, I've heard that like in the whole movie business, sometimes there's long working hours where you could be waking up crazy early, finishing stupid late. Is that typical, or is that just, I don't know, BS floating around? What's a typical work day when you go on set?
It's very common. You know, the crew is there every day for 14 plus hours. Because you got to think, if the actor's there, hair and makeup's got to get there before the actor. And then hair and makeup has to clean the actor up, you know. So them wardrobe people, they're there like, yeah, 16, 18 hours a day. Sometimes it's outrageous. Yeah. And then the crew comes in to set everything up and get ready. And then they have to break everything down. And
Sorry, who are the
so,
crew? What is crew? What does that mean?
yeah, so crews like basically everybody. You have your lighting, you've got the people that build the sets. You have people that, you know, hold the camera, focus the camera. There are people that can mark you, you know, they show you where you're standing, they put that down. So, you know, they all of that. There's a huge world behind the scenes of people that work on a film, that it's not just the actors, not just the director. You get writers sometimes there, often there, script supervisor who makes sure that you're saying all your lines, you're saying them like the right way. You've got you know, if you pick up a cup in one scene with one hand and put it down, you don't, because I'm like, I'm just gonna pick it up, whatever happens happens. um
Right.
and yeah, I mean, it's like there's hundreds and hundreds of extra people on the set that are doing a job, um that isn't just, you know, what you see in the final product. uh and then, you know, sometimes you'll have visual effects supervisors there to you know, make sure that they're aware of any certain special effects that need to go in afterwards. Or you know, in some sets I've seen them actually, they're like starting to like work away on it. It's pretty crazy. um yeah, it's a huge
Wow.
environment, so
So many of
everybody does. Yeah.
sorry, many of them what?
Oh, everyone, yeah, it's long hours. It's not, you know, I'm lucky as the actor, because there are some days I've gone in and I've done an hour of work and I've left. But then there are some days, you know, I might get picked up at 5 a.m. and not get home until 9. That's how it goes.
Right, right. Have you ever been in a situation where you've needed to just, I don't know, go in on last minute, like a last minute call, where I don't know, you could be asleep and the phone rings and like, yeah, we need you on set. Anything random like that, or just a last minute, I don't know, script sent to you, like, we need you for this. Could you do it? You're the only person, or anything like that. You know?
um, yeah, I mean, usually the most last minute thing is, you know, I'll be set to work one day and my call time will be a couple hours earlier than they told me. So I might be out at the gym and they're like, oh, you got to come in an hour. And I'm like, oh no, you know, running home, shower, all that. So that's usually the most last minute thing I've encountered. But I mean, man, this is the end of 2019 into 2020. Um, I was working 3 different projects, and one was Black Lightning in Atlanta. One was Mandalorian in Los Angeles, and one was Sweet Girl, which just came out in Pittsburgh. And obviously, my people are trying to make sure that, you know, everyone's got my schedule. I'm like booked out for certain days on one set, and, you know, open on others. Booked out meaning like you can't call me in on this day.
Hmm.
And, you know, I had an instance where I was on set in Los Angeles. Um, we were shooting until about midnight that night. And I got a call from my set in Georgia saying, we need Katy here tonight. And I'm like, it's 7 p.m. LA time. It's literally impossible for me to get to Atlanta, even if I hop on a flight right now. But also I'm booked out. So you knew I wasn't available. They're like, we don't care, we need you. So I wrap at midnight in Los Angeles. I hop on a flight 5 in the morning to get to Georgia. I get my lines. It was like anywhere from 4 to 6 pages of lines. I can't remember, but I had a lot of dialogue because it was just like, it was, I don't know, fake science jargon. I don't, stuff like that.
Right.
For this superhero thing. So I'm like memorizing my lines on the flight over. I got a nap and then had to go to set and film until midnight Georgia time. So there were times where stuff like that happened, and you just sometimes you would get rewrites on the day. Hey, here are your new sets of lines, or the night before, or just before, and just kind of, especially for TV. That's why it's important to be able to memorize quickly, because you just never know. They're just constantly rewriting.
Wow. Wow. Whoo. That's tough. To be honest with you, I'm thinking to myself, just memorizing a person's name for me is difficult, let alone a script, let alone it getting changed last minute. Oh yeah, by the way, we ain't using that no more. Like, excuse me, that's taken me weeks, and I still didn't
Yeah,
even know that fully. How?
yeah.
Um, what would you say is something that helps you to memorize a script when you are, yeah, when you're preparing for movies or series, and to be so in character as well. But yeah, mainly memorizing. What helps you to memorize all these scripts? Because to me, they're just words.
Yeah.
How does it work?
Well, and I think, there are a lot of different methods, and I think that a lot of different ways work well for, depending on your learning style. But it's, when they change lines the day of, that's when it kind of gets even more difficult, because it's like, you learn a technique one way and then suddenly someone asks you to learn it a different way. It's a challenge because you're always going to go back to the lines you memorized before, when you're naturally performing.
Mm,
So I've tried a couple different methods over the years. Every one that I learned helps me just that much better. And then the one that I've most recently subscribed to that helps me the most is called the Memory Palace. Um, so it's like, you picture um, an area that you know really well. So the example that I like to give usually is like your house, and you start, let's say, in your driveway. Um, and if we're talking about like to be or not to be, right? Uh, so you picture yourself in your driveway, and then you picture, maybe there are two cars, so you're like two, okay, two, and then you see, you picture a bee's nest, right? You're like two bee, or there could just be two bees there, however it works for you. And then you start to walk, and then you look over, and it's like maybe the bees nest with like a cross out of it, like crossed out, so it's like to be or not to be, so
right.
you do it kind of word by word, or phrase by phrase, whatever is easier for you, but you're putting pictures to it. And in cognitive psychology, they generally show that if you can picture things, because we're very visual learners generally, that's one of the best ways to memorize. So for me, if I'm really, really struggling with some lines, and I have to learn them very quick's the key here, I'll use that. Uh, there's also, some people love to, uh, it's like you write down the first letter of each word. You write it down, you keep the punctuation in, all that, and that helps them memorize it very quickly, because they're just thinking the letter, and a lot of times it's something that's really written well. It might have some alliteration that can help you. It might have a pattern that helps you. Usually when we speak, we're thinking like procedural, your lawyer drama, something like that, medical drama. They'll say things like, if we are doing this, then we'll do this because we'll do it, and that's how it's written generally. So you just get that pattern down too. But the one piece of advice that I'll tell, anybody is just make sure that you memorize it right the first time. Read it
Okay.
through, don't memorize it before you're ready. Memorize it correctly the first time, because the second you add a word that doesn't belong there, or you switch a word, that's kind of what your brain's going to keep going to. And you might find that when you start to freeze up on your lines, choke on your lines, it's that word that you memorized incorrectly the first time that just messes with you the whole time.
Damn, that's interesting. Um, it kind of reminded me when I have a book which is out called Your Mind Builds Your Body. And when I was suggested to do the audio book, I just, although I was reading it, my own words, I just changed it in my head, and I kept getting it wrong because my brain was like, no, we prefer it this way. I just kept messing it up, and the audio people were like, yeah, you've added an extra word. If you could just remove that, then it would be great. I was like, do you know what? I can't do this. I was like, look, I've got too many things going on. And if you're going to be concerned about a single word, let's forget it. So I ended up getting someone
Yeah.
else to do the audio part, which was really bad, really bad. I'll probably, do that at a later time. But I see
Yeah.
what you mean. It makes sense. So you're married. Congrats.
Mhm. Thank
Um,
you.
yeah. So you're married to a lady called, is it Kylie? Her name's Kylie. Yeah. How
Yeah.
long have you been married?
We've only been married for a year and 1 month and 7 days.
Could you break down the hours and the minutes?
I can't because of time difference. It would take me the rest of the interview.
Oh, cool, cool. Um, so yeah, like whilst you are away, let's say for instance, times when you are recording as well, like when you're doing the series, or let's say you're doing a movie, you're probably away. Are you away for an extended period of time normally when let's say when you're recording?
Yeah. When I did Z Nation, I was away for about 5 months or so. Um, the whole time I had very few breaks where I could actually go home. And because of the nature of my wife's work, it's also difficult for her to come out and visit me because she's working constantly.
Mm.
And then uh, Black Lightning was kind of the same way. I had more trips back to Los Angeles, which was great, but it was a lot of time away from home. So yeah, I mean, it's funny because Los Angeles, when we think of LA, we think of Hollywood, we think that's where all the films are, and a lot of stuff is still filmed out there. But I so often am called out of LA to go to work. So
Right, right.
yeah, what
And
yeah.
how does Kylie work around this? Is she normally okay? Like, do you both really miss each other at that time, or I don't know, you do lots of video calls and stuff if she can't come out?
Yeah. I mean, we try to, every night we try to give a call.
Mm.
Um, this month's been kind of weird because of everyone else's schedules, but we have one day a week where we play Dungeons and Dragons together. So we have like, a 4 hour nerd fest. And every now and then, if both of us are free, we'll do like a date night Zoom thing. We haven't really done that this trip because of the time difference is just so ridiculous. But um, yeah, you try to. It's like one of my friends suggested it, and it's pretty fun. But you try to order the same food or make the same food, something like that. Watch the same movie together, and it's as close to being there as you can be. Um,
Oh.
but I mean, I don't know. It gets easier every time, but harder every time because you're more confident in your relationship in one way. So it's a little easier. You're not worried like, oh, what who's she hanging out with, any of that stuff. But you know, it's still a long time away and a distance away. And, you know, right now we're playing back and forth as to whether she might have to go to Puerto Rico for her job, which is why she's not here in the first place. Um, and then, you know, if she's not, then will she come out here? Then what will we do with our cat? Uh, the cat I really miss. I used to not be a cat person, and now I'm like obsessed with this cat that I have. She's like, I would wake up with her every morning, just
Mhm.
curled up all over my face.
Is your baby?
So, you know, and yeah, she's my baby, and she doesn't understand why I'm gone. You know, she thinks I abandoned her, and it's just heartbreaking.
Oh, that's sweet. That's sweet. Um, there's so much acceptance now with gay marriages, uh, probably more so than transsexuals. I've heard some horrific stories with transsexuals, to be honest. How was it? I don't know, speaking to your mum and dad, saying, "Hey, I'm gay." Was it a big deal,
Yeah,
or was it, just natural? How was it for you? Because a lot of people, it's a massive deal.
yeah, I know. You know, the thing is, I always knew that my parents would be chill with it, but I don't know. I felt like I came out late. You know, I think I was like 23 or something. So I was like, in my mind, I'm like, I'm this like grown ass adult. They're gonna be so confused. It's like weird at this point. Um, and so I think it was like my own insecurities that really kind of like kept me back from anything. But it's just, you know, one day I was dating this girl and I was like, okay, well, you know, it's getting somewhat serious, so I should just say something. So it's like it just texted my mom, "Hey mom, I've got a girlfriend now." And she's like, "Okay," you know. And then my dad had to sit me down. He's like, "Hey, maybe that wasn't the best way to go about it. Like obviously we care about you. We don't care about this. Like, you know, we're always going to love you. But like, I don't know, your mom felt like you guys talk about everything, but you just like didn't talk about this for so long." And I was like, I know it's yeah, but but at the same time, like I think I also just never talked about when I was dating. So I just like anyone. I just was like, I don't want to talk about it. Even when I was dating guys, it was like, this is no one's business.
Oh,
It was something that I was always really private of.
that's interesting.
Yeah. So
You did date guys for a period, yeah?
yeah. I think for the longest time I was like, well, I think men are pretty, you know, I like aesthetically, I'm like, yeah, they're very pretty. Um, but whenever I would go on dates or anything, I just like never felt I didn't understand how I was supposed to feel. I was like, yeah, they're great. I don't feel the need to kiss this person right now. I don't feel the need to like be intimate with them. And then at the same time, I think, you know, where I grew up, I never met a girl that I was like head over heels for either. And it wasn't until college that I saw like I met like the first group of women who were actually they weren't stuck in the I have to look this way, I have to act this way, I have to be a certain way box.
Mm.
They were very, you know, free, their own people. I think it was the first time I saw a woman with short hair, like all kinds of new experiences in college. And I was like, oh my God, that girl's really pretty. It was like the first time I had that. It was like, ooh, she's like, okay. Um, and so it was kind of baby steps for me, just like exploring that. And then eventually I was like, okay, well maybe this is actually what's supposed to happen. And the first date that I had with a girl, first uh, kiss that I had, I was like, oh, okay, that's how that's supposed to feel. Like
Right.
this is the thing. So then it all kind of just made sense at that point. And I was like, and it wasn't until later I took a class because I taught at UCLA, taught martial arts. And they had us take a bunch of classes on sexual orientation and gender and things like that. And they were talking about like there's a difference between, you know, being romantic, being able to be romantic with someone, because you have like asexual people, for instance, are generally able to be not generally, I don't want to generalize anybody, but oftentimes are able to be romantic with somebody, but there's not a sexual component there. And so I was like, oh, I could and was romantic with these guys that I was dating. Like dating them was fun, I guess, but there was no sexual attraction there.
Mm.
It's just, yeah, it's interesting to like the more I learn about uh all of this, as I feel like even still life, you're just constantly learning. Um, the more I kind of understand myself.
Yeah. I, I, I find it fascinating, especially, if you're you try one, you're like, do you know what, this doesn't seem right. I often question how do you know, like, when you meet someone. I mean, there's no labels to say, oh yeah, I'm gay too. I often get guys message me all the time, asking me if I'm single, and I'm like, dude, I'm not gay. And then it made me think, how do they know? How do you guys, like, how do you figure it out? Like, you got a gay look about you, like, you know what I mean? It's interesting, you know. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I don't
I
know.
mean, sometimes you don't necessarily all the time. There's this whole thing in like the lesbian community of the invisible femme, right? Because women who are very, very feminine, they get their nails done, got all the makeup on, the hair, like the dress is beautiful like that. A lot of times, someone might look at them and be like, well, they're obviously not gay. And they get ignored because of that. And they're like, but I want a girlfriend, So that's like it's like a whole conflict, a whole thing. But then, in TV representation, they're the gay person that you see. It's usually like a very feminine, beautiful lesbian, and then her beautiful lesbian wife. And then if you see someone that, like me, I'm like the stereotype in the background. I'm like, wearing a freaking button down shirt, what do you call a flannel shirt, and like, I don't know, have an axe or some shit. Like, I don't know what they do, but that it's like a stereotype is kind of like what I look like. So in terms of finding a date, I generally had an easier time, especially after I cut my hair. Like, I generally have kind of a masculine posture and stance. But yeah, it's, some people will wear rainbow shit. I think that's a little outdated. I think now you just go talk to someone, especially in a place like Los Angeles, where people are a little more open to understanding, like, hey, this person it's not a threat that somebody is telling me that they think I'm beautiful. The Midwest or some places in the South and, all over the world, really. It's a little more dangerous to approach someone and say, hey, I think you're really beautiful. And they might feel threatened by that. So in communities like that, that's where like flagging is kind of a more important concept. So wearing things like, a rainbow patch, or there's like a whole handkerchief system that I don't know, but it's like there's some communities that do that, where it's like, this color means, I'm dominant, or this color means I'm submissive, or this color means I like this. There's like a whole flagging thing in some communities. But
Got your flag as well? You and your wife got your flags? Or it's like, we don't need that anymore.
we don't, yeah, we don't. But it's funny because, like, if you have a handkerchief and it's there, you might be cluing somebody into something you're not aware of. But uh, yeah.
What about in the film industry? It probably, I don't know, is there any sort of discrimination there, or is it just absolutely fine or even beneficial?
um I think, now again, people they're trying to change things. um and some places are going a little too far, in my opinion. Some people now are saying, well, if you aren't gay, don't audition for this gay role. um because a lot of the time the people that they cast for gay roles are not gay. um and that's great for someone like me, who's like, I still haven't been cast in a gay role. But I see all these straight women getting cast, and I'm like, what the hell? So in one way that's great, but in another way, if you're not out to your family yet, or you're not out to your friends or your community, um, and you get an opportunity for an amazing part, then you have to out yourself, or your agent has to out you, and things like that. I don't necessarily agree with, um, especially when it can put your life in danger, just based off, where you are, um, or something like that. So, uh, yeah, I mean, I personally haven't felt like, when I'm on set, no one is being disrespectful to me or being weird about it. Other than to say, oh, I know another gay person, you should go hang out with them sometime. That kind of little microaggressions where they don't realize that they're saying something really weird.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's yeah, I think generally it's good. I do think that you know, I just feel like I'm myself, but I feel like a lot of times I'll still get cast or typecast or thought of as a super butch, super like, you know, gruff masculine person, and that's not necessarily who I feel like I am. But you still get that typecast every now and then.
Right.
I think that's kind of the biggest discrimination that I'm feeling, but yeah,
Okay.
sure it's different for others.
Mm-hmm. You do
Mhm.
different types of martial arts as well, isn't it? And how long have you been doing martial arts?
I started when I was 5 or 6. Um, I was bullied in school in kindergarten, and my dad, or no, it was first grade or kindergarten. My dad signed me up for karate. Um, we loved it. It kind of became, my dad, my brother, and I would go to classes together, and so it was a fun little family time. Uh, did a couple little tournaments. My tiny little self, not knowing what I'm doing. It's kind of like the acting thing. You're learning all this stuff, but you don't know why you're doing it. So you go into sparring and you're just doing this, and it's like probably adorable. I don't have footage of it, but I'm sure it was pretty hilarious. Um, and so yeah, I did that, and then there's a little gap where tried some other sports, some soccer, some softball, did track, all that. And then once I got into college, my university had this phenomenal martial arts program, and that's where I just went, head on into it, and haven't looked back since.
Wow. And
Mhm.
what type of martial arts are you doing?
So my black belt and what I teach, when I can teach, I haven't had much time lately, but that's in a Korean martial art called Hapkido. Um, and a lot of people hear that and they're like, "Oh yeah, Aikido." And it's like, no, it's totally different. It's Hapkido. Um, it's a little more, I don't want to say aggressive, but like offensive. Aikido is almost strictly defensive. It's responding to a stimulus. And this one, you're also, you're making sure that it doesn't get to the point where you're grabbed. But if it does, then you have a response. So um, yeah, so it's a very different style. So that's the one that I've got probably the most experience in. Um, and then I've dabbled in a lot of different ones, but I still actively train Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, which is still fairly new to me compared to the others, but I'm loving it. It's like I didn't want to do it for the longest time because you get so sweaty, and like you're all over each other and you're like on top of each other. You're cuddle. It's basically like really aggressive cuddling. But you're so sweaty, and so like by the end of the day, you're just covered in like 20 other people's sweat, and it's just disgusting. And so for the longest time, I was like, nope, not doing it. So gross. And finally, I started doing it. It's really fun once you get past the smell. Um, and I really feel like it's out to my game a lot other from my other martial arts, because a lot of times you do wind up on the ground, and if you don't train how to fight on the ground, then you're kind of screwed.
Yeah. So there's different. Oh, is that my alarm? Let's turn this off. My bad. Um, so the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that one with lots of grappling and hugging and that type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So usually in a tournament, for instance, you'll start standing up, do some grappling. So it's in close fighting, right? So you got your long range, which would be like our weapons. You have kicking range, feet, and then you've got striking range, and then you have like your elbow, knee, and your grappling range. So that's when you're in really close.
Mm.
So you start standing up. Usually you're gonna find a way to get them to the ground one way or another. So either you can throw them, you find a good way to throw, reap, get them to the ground, or sometimes people just, if they can't do it, person's stable on their feet, or your grappling game's not so great, they'll do what they call it, is like pull into your guard. So you'll just kind of fall backwards and pull them into you. So then once you're on the ground, usually it'll kind of stay on the ground. There might be one person up, one person down, but usually it's just trying to get the best vantage point on the ground. And then unlike wrestling, where it's you're trying to get a pin, for this you're trying to tap someone else. So you're trying to get a really good joint lock or a good choke, to the point where they're like, no, I'm done. I'm not, I'm not going to fight anymore. But in competition, you can still win on points or something too. I feel like that's probably how a lot of people win. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. What about Hapkido? You said Hapkido. So that
Yeah.
you're a black belt in that. There's man, there's so many different forms of martial arts. I find the whole thing really fascinating. I always question, how do they all come about? Where they all originate in different ways, and they've all got their history behind them. And because there's so much to pick, it's such a big menu. Sometimes people are like, there's too many, I can't pick, and then they just don't end up doing it. And I think I'm one of those people. Like, I want to do martial arts, but I wouldn't know where to start. What made you choose Hapkido?
So Hapkido honestly just kind of fell into my lap. I don't know that I would have necessarily sought it out, unless that was like the gym closest to me, through Indiana University, where I went to school. Their self-defense program is linked in with their Hapkido program. So you learn Hapkido, and then kind of simultaneously, it's also self-defense. So that's how I got into that. It was just a matter of chance. And I really liked a lot of the stuff that I learned. It's a style that they took their throws from concepts from judo, their joint locks from Japanese jiu-jitsu and Aikido concepts. We do a little bit of weapons work that we've implemented from like Filipino martial arts, but Hapkido has its own weapon system too. And then a lot of kicks from Taekwondo, which is another Korean style. So, it's kind of an eclectic martial art, which I liked when I was looking through it, because I did want diversity. I didn't want to just, I only learn how to throw someone or only learn how to do joint locks. And then it's like, okay, well, I can do a joint lock, but how am I going to do that? You don't just walk up to someone and joint lock them, so yeah, which would be really weird. So I wanted something that was kind of branched out and did a lot of things. And my program was really receptive to, learning as much as you could. So I took Jeet Kune Do concepts. I took some Filipino martial arts. I took a semester of capoeira, and some judo and jujitsu, and take what works for you, and then and apply that to your style. And that's kind of how I go through my acting philosophy too. It's like, this works for me, this doesn't, apply it to your style. And I think because everyone is so different, that's generally just kind of what you have to do. So if you're searching for a martial art, then you kind of go, okay, you're a big guy, so Hapkido is probably not going to be the best for you, but like boxing would be amazing, or something like jujitsu would be great, because it really works for a big person and a small person too, for grappling arts. But yeah, it's just kind of finding out, playing with things, seeing like, this is really fun. I like this style because it just gives me a great cardio workout or something. And I hate going on runs. So like, this is the reason I'm going to do this. Or, for me, Muay Thai, yeah, it's helped increase my punching game, my striking game, dodging, that kind of thing. But it's also just, it's like the best stress relief for me, because you're just sitting there pounding into a bag. kind of letting out all that energy, and that's where I really feel the benefit from it. It's not just like all the, the training aspect, it's the conditioning aspect that I really get a lot out of. So I mean, everyone's got their own reasons. That the reason there's so many martial arts styles, I mean, Mars, right? Mars, the god of war. Martial arts is like the art of war, essentially. A lot of these styles came from people either subtly having to train a military, for revolt, rebellion, or very prominently, this is our military style. So a lot of them, you might be training with sticks, but when they were training with farming equipment or knives or what they had, but right now, safety, we're training with sticks. You when you know the history of the styles that you're training, it kind of becomes more interesting, and you understand more why you do the things you do. There's a really cool style called silat, and it's Indonesian martial art, and they do a lot of like 3 limbs on the ground. So your legs, and then maybe your one hand might be on the ground, or maybe all 4. And when you live in a really wet, marshy environment, doing a martial art where you have to stand up the whole time, you're going to slip, right? So that's kind of why they developed the style the way they did. And if you try to, do jujitsu in a swamp or something, you're going to drown, right? So it's like they developed the styles for their environment too, the resources they had, how they can disguise it as training. I mean, there's so many reasons that they're designed the way they are. It's really cool.
That's really fascinating stuff. Yeah, learning the history, and I guess it encourages you to work harder when you understand where it's all coming from, and perhaps certain resources which you have and the older generation didn't have, to make it a bit easier for you to learn. Sometimes I guess being in that setting makes it easier as well. It's like when you watch certain movies where they're training, they're imitating someone training for a fight, and then they go back to some old school training, how it used to be done, like the old school movies, things like the old Van Damme movies, like, he's training in a really nice gym and he gets the shit beaten out of him, and he's like, okay, I need to go to some friggin' old place where they do it old school. I don't know, learn from some grandmaster or something like that. There's a certain essence to that, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and I feel like, sometimes a lot of stuff gets lost in translation too, and you start to, even in a lot of modern martial arts, you start to, you get people that are just there to learn to fight, and not necessarily understand why they're doing what they're doing, or why this movement works over this one, or they haven't seen some of the older fighting styles. So when they encounter that, it's like, whoa, this is counterintuitive, or this is different. I don't know how to defend against this. So there's something to be said about going back and learning from essentially the fundamentals, like, this is where this came from. Let's learn the basics. There are things even in my training where, oh yeah, I forgot we did that back then, oh yeah, like that was a thing that we used to do. I totally forgot about that. And then, I start to work it back into my training and stuff. And there's a lot of stuff that looks silly that we do, these like crazy flashy kicks, like, when are you going to land that? And then you see someone do it in an MMA ring, because it's just like this, it's like it kind of messes with your head a little. Like, your body's not supposed to move that way. I'm used to just doing 100,000 Thai kicks, and this person spun in the air and did some crazy kick, but generally they're either used for deception or they're used for conditioning. They're not, like, a lot of times some of these kicks they're not necessarily practical kicks, but they're great for conditioning your legs, conditioning your strength. And that's how you have to kind of see training them. But sometimes you see people work them into actual fights. It's kind of funny, but it works, because it's like, that's not what you're supposed to do. But yeah, and it's another thing that I see, in modern gyms too, that kind of It irks me a little bit is like there's not they don't teach a lot of the history, and they don't teach a lot um of respect. And it's not to say that they're disrespectful, they like, they're like rude to people or anything like that, but um when you walk into a school and you bow, right? It's not like, it's not just humbling yourself or whatever we think a bow means. um it's essentially a way to pay respect, not only to your teacher, not only to the school. Like, you should be grateful that you have a training environment, right? So you're showing that by bowing. You walk in, you bow, you before you go on the mat, you bow, because you're appreciative of the environment that's been provided for you. You're appreciative of your instructor and of the past instructors as well. That's what another thing that you think about when you are showing respect, is like so many people lived and breathed these styles so that you could have the opportunity to learn it, brought it over to, for instance, the US or the UK, so that you had the opportunity to learn it. And so you're paying respects to them, and you're also respecting the people that you're training with that day, because in all honesty, when we walk out on the street, if someone wanted to kill you today, they could. They could just come up and stab you in the throat and you're dead. And you're like, why me? No, no, So you kind of like almost should just thank everybody as you walk by. Thanks for not killing me. But when you go into a gym and you're bowing to your partner, it's showing, this is a consensual um sparring environment. We're going to be respectful to each other. We're going to push each other. It's going to be a good workout, but like within the bounds of this understanding. There's there's so many reasons to bow, and like we just it's like so many times people just don't understand that, and they just dismiss it. They're like, that's too formal, don't do it. And you're like, okay, but it's, there's so much meaning behind it that you're just ignoring because you think it's I don't know, some outdated, way too formal,
Yeah.
some bougie
Again,
thing.
I think as you mentioned earlier, certain things just get lost in translation where people, it's like, I just want to get the outcome. I want to know how to kick ass in this style, and that is it. Yeah, forget all this other faffing around. I don't need any of that. I just want to know. I just want to kick ass, and I want to get graded and get these belts, and yeah, I want to be a badass. Um, it's
Yeah.
like there's a lot of people that go to the gym. They want to achieve a certain body type um, for resistance training. When I say gym, and they just want to try and fast track it, and they're not focusing on the fundamentals, you know. Mind, body, soul. It's so many things when it comes to developing an aesthetic physique, but people just want to go in there and they want to they're like, okay, what are the exercises? All right, cool. And then I'll get messages like, oh, I've been training for years but I'm not getting results. It's because you're not passionate about it. You don't even understand your body. They're just going in there just thinking if they move the weight, then they're going to change their body. But there's no passion for it. There's no mind to muscle connection. um,
Mhm.
the foods which they're eating are not that. It's not only low vibration foods. They're eating garbage, but they're not even chewing their food slowly, appreciating the food that they eat. There's so much to it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's so many funky different types of machines now that you have in a gym. I'm like, what the hell is that? And it's cool for isolation exercises, but we also need to remember that compound lifts are the fundamentals, and many people don't even know what that is. I ain't got time for that. I'm trying to build this particular muscle, and that is it. Like, I don't need any of that. So again,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, lost in translation. People need to, we need to take it back. Let them understand. Let them learn. Speak to our ancestors.
And it's you talk about compound lifts because those are, it's not the simplest lifts because they require your whole body. Like, so appropriately lift that weight. If I'm doing a deadlift, I have to tighten my core, I have to fix my back in the right setting, I have to have a good grip, all kinds of, it takes a lot of mental concentration too, and especially as the weight gets heavier and you don't want to die less and less. Um, but it's, I got into figure competitions because I just wanted to look good. I was like, oh, that's great. That looks nice. That's how I want my body to look. And my first coach, he was nice. But I was like, I want to learn more about this because I guess trust issues or something. I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. So I actually like got a trainer certification, like read all these books, got certified. Um, because I started to be like, I don't know, this doesn't feel right. Something's not right. I wanted to learn more and more. And then I started looking at, I got Arnold's book, Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding. And I looked through that. I'm like, oh, wow, these guys are, I mean, every day they're in here twice a day. They're doing, I mean, cheering each other on. They've got this community, giving each other shit, all of that. And it was like, oh, this is a community. And I found that in Indiana, and that kept me going, and it was great. And we're sharing meal ideas so that we're not just eating boring food all the time.
Mhm.
And it keeps you going, and then you learn more, and then you learn more, and you learn more about the history, and you learn more about what works for different bodies, and you learn more about so much. And it's just the more the more successful I feel like you're going to be. And then because you start to become more passionate and you start to get more into it, and uh I don't want to say necessarily that you always have to live and breathe it, but you start to think about it in different ways, like, oh, I'm walking, but oh, I'm activating my glutes more. That's cool. And you're starting to like just pick up on things in your day-to-day life. You're like, oh, this is amazing. I'm using all butt when I walk up the stairs. This feels good.
Yeah.
It's just like little things like that. Yeah, and I feel like that's just, I know that you're like now also really into nutrition, and I don't know, along the lines where you're like, oh, my just working out isn't doing it, I got to get into nutrition. But at some point you realize that, um yeah, I mean,
It's
I think the
fascinating.
key to success is
That's
learning as much
it.
as you can.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. And I think you made an interesting point about the community thing as well. When you've got a community of people who I'd say of similar interest, then it kind of um, it can help to amplify your speed of learning when you're working on a craft, I guess, like whether it's martial arts or building your body. Hopefully, it's the right community.
yeah,
But it's not just the words expressed, but it's the energy in the environment. It's the frequency of energy there. It's like the difference between listening to music through your headphones or in your house or going to a club. When you listen to the music and it pounds through your chest and you feel it. You feel it. You don't just hear it, you feel it. So when you go to the gym, you might be able to train at home, but like when you go to the gym, like you feel the energy, like everyone else's passion of wanting to better themselves. And you kind of get that as well. Like, yeah, let's get this together. I wanted to ask
yeah.
you, in acting, like if somebody wanted to start acting, if somebody wanted to do what you do and become a success, what would you say would be a good starting point for them if they didn't know, all right, how do I become an actor? Like, what do I do? Where do I start? And I think I'm cool at acting. I'm all right on YouTube videos. What should they do to I don't know, get their pool in their foot in the water? Is that the expression? But just get their foot in the door.
Yeah, so bad at idioms. I was like, yeah, sure, they're paw in the water. That's the one. Yeah, I'm so bad at it. Like, I always say the wrong one. I don't understand them. Like, um, yeah. So I think one of the biggest first steps is, research classes in your area. Research the teacher, because you don't want to wind up in a class where the teacher is just taking your money and they don't actually know what they're talking about or doing. And sometimes reviews aren't a great resource for that kind of thing, because I've noticed, like, man, actors in these classes, sometimes they get in these weird cult mentalities, and it's like, my teacher can do no wrong. Everything I learn here is correct, even if they're not seeing any success from it. I think it's just that cognitive dissonance where I'm paying, $500 a month for this class, so I must be learning, right? Or my teacher is telling me I'm great, so like this is a great class. So, I don't necessarily always look at the reviews, because sometimes those can be misleading. But I do look at the teacher and are they a working actor? um, do do their clients book, you know do they have, usually they'll have testimonials, oh, this client booked, whatever, and then you can look them up, and okay, well, they booked something that wasn't real, so it's like, this isn't an actual project, that kind of thing. um, and then I also, like, if you're interested in theater, find a good stage acting teacher. And if you're interested in film, you probably should find a film acting teacher. There's no harm in doing both, or learning both, for sure. Um, but if you are really successful in theater and want to get into film, those skills don't necessarily translate perfectly. You have to really project in theater. Things are really far away, and usually you have a very trained voice. And when you get to TV, that seems like a bit much, so you want to tone it down. And you're playing to someone who's right in front of you, so you don't need to scream, and you honestly don't need to enunciate too much, because that's not how we talk naturally usually. Um, so there are little, there are minute differences, and also understanding camera angles, where the cameras are, and that kind of thing. So, um, yeah, I was very fortunate that the acting coach that I found um, was a working actor, had representation, um, knew the business side of acting very well, and was able to guide me in that. If you don't find something locally now, especially with like the whole pandemic thing, a lot of acting coaches, like really well-known acting coaches, have online classes now. And you can learn from them online, about the business side of things, about working the camera. It's not as great as in person, but it's better than nothing, right? So for me, I think just class is a good mentor. Something like that is always a great place to start. I got my manager through my acting teacher. I took another acting class, and I got my agent through that acting teacher. So, you get network opportunities that way too, industry connections that way. Some one of your classmates might also be, doing film, low budget film, something like that, and they can help you get a reel together. And one of my good friends, um, hasn't necessarily gotten a lot of success in booking like union projects or SAG-AFTRA projects, but through his acting classes, he has come out with some beautiful movies that are now going into festivals and things like that, and that's going to get him a lot of attention, um, just through networking in his classes, and showing up and having a good attitude, and having talent, and continuing to grow that talent. So I think it's always the best way to start, and then from there on, save your money, have a either a job you can do, that's available, like, so you can go to auditions, things like that, or yeah, just save a lot of money, because it's actually a really, really expensive career starting off.
Right, right. Okay, thanks a lot for that information for people who want to know. Where can people find some of your work? Some of, movies that you've been in, and some of the series that you've been on a sci-fi or Netflix.
It's funny because a lot of stuff does come out on Netflix, and I think, especially over here in the UK, that's going to be the easiest answer that I can tell you. So, yeah, Black Lightning, it's a superhero show, um, uh, that was on our CW network. That is now, I think all the seasons are now up on Netflix. So I was in season 3 of that. Z Nation, I was in season 5 of that. That's on Netflix now. Just had a guest star on The Rookie, which was one of my favorite characters yet, just in terms of getting to be tough and vulnerable at the same time. Um, I have no idea where that plays here. I don't know that it's on Netflix yet, but I did get a bunch of people from the UK like a couple months ago, like, oh, your episode just came out, it was awesome, whatever. So I know it's here somewhere.
Right,
But
okay.
it's yeah, it's a show with Nathan Fillion for the rookie. Um, and then yeah, I mean, I don't know where everything else plays, but Sweet Girl, I have a small part in that. It's a Netflix movie that just came out. Was #1 internationally for a few days running. So I don't know how it's going now, but
Congrats.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't do much. It's Jason Momoa did it, so
All right. Oh, awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. And are there any others or that's it? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, Mandalorian. I was on that. So that's on Disney Plus. I'm sure there's tons of others that I'm forgetting about right now, but those are the key ones. And then, I have other projects coming out soon that I can't talk about, but when I can, I will make announcements.
Please do. Please do. I'll share it on my IG story or something because I'm trying to keep up to date with all the stuff that you're getting involved in. I love your character. You got a great personality, lots of energy, and I did see a clip of the Z Nation. I saw you shooting a couple of people, which was pretty wild. Loved it. I didn't know you were that sort of person, but
They're zombies, man. Like, what can you do?
um, so you're on social media. I know you're on Instagram. Do you have anything else people can follow you on? Or is
Yeah,
it
I do Instagram and Twitter. I haven't gotten with the youths these days and done a TikTok, but it's all at VKDO THEKATYO. I also have a Facebook that I never get on ever. So I mean, if you message me there, I apologize. Uh, so I don't know. The longer social media goes on, the less I want to interact with it. So I'll post every now and then I try to keep up, but I just don't do well.
Yeah, I feel you. Well, look, Katie, it's been absolutely amazing. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And have an incredible time in UK.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show. It's been a joy.
Yes, it's been a pleasure. You take care now.
Yeah, you too.